I worked at a gas station for a brief period of time almost 5 years ago. During that time, I worked overnight shifts. The city that the gas station was in I would describe as pretty quiet and small. In the overnight hours, there would never be much business. I would be the only one working for most of my shift, and I'm kind of surprised that we were even open all night at all. The gas station was along a road not too far off the highway, so it would get some traffic. There weren't really any other businesses close by though. Probably 3 weeks after I started working there, I had gotten the hang of the routine. But still, I was always a little nervous working overnights. Being by myself in the gas station, not knowing if anybody who walked in there could be dangerous, was something I thought about far too much. But through the first couple of weeks that I had worked there, nothing too unusual happened. But that all changed one night. The time was probably 2, maybe 2:30 a.m. Things were very quiet. As I sat behind the counter, I saw a car pulling into the gas station from the road. The car drove past the 4 gas pumps that we had and started driving towards the parking spaces right out front. But it didn't park there. Instead, it turned and went to the side of the building. There were a couple of extra parking spaces there. Maybe 30 seconds later, I saw somebody. It was a man, and he was walking towards the door. He opened the front door and came inside. When he did, he walked straight towards me at the counter. The man then spoke, saying that there was a problem with the free air that we had. On the side of the building, in front of one of the parking spaces, we had free air that people could use to fill their tires. The guy said that his car had terrible air pressure in the tires, and he really needed it and asked me to help. I wanted to help the guy, but I really didn't know how to fix the machine if it was in fact broken. Beyond knowing how to use the machine, I didn't know much about it. I told the man that I probably wouldn't be able to help him, but he asked that I come out and try anyways. I agreed to, and I followed the man outside the gas station. We walked out front around to the side. When we got there, I saw the man's car. It was an SUV, and it was not parked at the space for air, but was parked like 3 spaces over instead. I also looked at his tires, and the ones that I saw appeared to have plenty of air in them. Things were starting to seem a little bit strange. Furthermore, when we got to the air pump, I picked it up to see that it was working just fine. I said to the man that it seemed to be working. He told me that when he tried it, it didn't work, and then asked me to explain to him how to use it. I started explaining it to the man. He stood right next to the building as I stood in the parking space where you would park to use the machine. As I spoke, I saw out of the corner of my eye the SUV start moving. It looked like it was backing up. I was about to ask the man if that was his car, but he told me to keep explaining. I started to, but then heard a sudden screeching of tires. When I looked to the side, I saw the SUV headed straight towards me. I jumped out of the way and got to the sidewalk next to the building just before the car would have ran me over. The car ended up hitting the air pump and then quickly turning to the side. I saw it start to back up. I got up and ran for the gas station door. The other man who had been standing talking with me had already ran away around the building towards the back of it. I got inside the gas station and went to lock the doors immediately. The car outside drove around and then back to the side. I got to the doors, locked them, and then witnessed the car speeding out of the parking lot and back onto the road. I kept the store closed for a while with the doors locked. Nobody tried to go in during that time though. I made a call to the police, who came out a short time later and took down all of the information that I could give them. We did have a few security cameras. Unfortunately, none of them were angled to show that side of the building. One of the cameras at the gas pump saw the car speeding away, but the quality was not nearly good enough to show the license plates. All I could give was the make and model of the car and a description of the man. In the end, that was enough to make me quit that job. I gave my 2 weeks notice the next day and got another job after that. Working overnights at a gas station wasn't for me, and I have a lot of respect for the people that do it. I'm not sure why those guys tried to run me over either. I could have been seriously injured that night. I'm a female, and I work as a bartender in the city. This is a job that I've had for 3 years, and I really enjoy it. I live in an apartment building only a few blocks away from the bar that I work at. I've had a couple of scary experiences though. Most of them weren't too bad, but the scariest one was only about a year ago. I usually work until pretty late at night, about 2 or 3 a.m. One night, it was really busy like it typically is at the bar that I work at. The sidewalk out front has lots of people that walk by on it as well. At maybe 1 a.m., there was a man walking by on the sidewalk, and he stopped and looked in the window. From where I am behind the bar, I have a pretty good view out of our large window that we have out front. The guy had on older sunglasses and a hat, but he appeared to be looking right at me. He had stopped and was just standing there looking inside the window. I saw him and thought it was a little weird, but just kept on working. I was really busy and I didn't have time to think about it. As some time went by, I think he left because I didn't notice him anymore. But sometime later, he returned and was once again staring at me through the window. It was a couple of minutes where I wasn't too busy, and I realized how weird this was. I just looked at him, looking at me. He didn't wave or anything. He was just staring at me through the window. He was standing maybe a foot away from it. After about 2 or 3 minutes straight, I watched him walk away. He didn't come inside to the bar at all that I know of. I certainly didn't recognize him, but then again, he was wearing sunglasses and it was dark out, so I didn't get a great look at him. Plus, I met probably thousands of people during my years of bartending. That night, when I got off at almost 3 a.m., I walked home like usual. By now, the streets were almost completely empty despite it being a busy city. They typically were at this hour. It took me maybe 10 minutes to walk to and from work. About halfway back, I was on the sidewalk and I passed by an alley. When I passed it by, I noticed somebody was standing in the alleyway about 50 feet down. It was certainly creepy that anybody would be standing in the middle of a dark alley at that hour. I looked over just out of instinct and noticed that this was the same man. He still had on his weird sunglasses, and they weren't weird in a funny way. They were older and outdated. He was just standing there doing nothing but staring at me as I walked past. I sped up and walked faster. I couldn't believe that I was seeing him again. This was a large city, so many people lived there. I started to wonder if this man somehow knew that I would walk past. I kept my eyes out to see if the man would follow me out of the dark alley. I was nervous and felt around for my bottle of mace just to be on the safe side. As I walked away, I noticed that he did not come out of the alley though. I kept looking behind me and was not followed home. When I made it back, I felt relieved. I had never felt that nervous walking home before. I had done so many times, at all kinds of late hours too, and nothing that suspicious had ever happened. After I got home, I was really tired. I got ready for bed and then went into my bedroom. My apartment was on the 5th floor, so I was sort of high up. I shut off my lights before getting into bed and also looked out my window. I had a nice view of the city, and I looked around, but then I looked down to the street. On the sidewalk, the man was standing there. He was staring right up at me. I quickly moved away from the window and then covered it with the blinds. I didn't know how this guy knew where I lived, especially which apartment specifically was mine. I was really creeped out. After that, in the days that followed, I felt sort of paranoid. I told several friends and coworkers about it. None of them knew who the man could be, but they were also concerned for my safety. They told me I should consider going to the police, especially if I saw the guy again. But I didn't. For a while, that is. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks went by. I had just forgotten about the whole situation. Then, one night, I had gotten home from work and was getting ready for bed. I was in my bathroom washing my face when I thought I heard a noise coming from the hallway in my apartment right outside my front door. With the water running right next to my head, I couldn't hear very well though. I turned the water off from the sink and listened. Just then is when I heard my front doorknob getting turned, but the door was luckily locked. Then there was a pause for about 30 seconds. That was followed by a knock on my front door. I just knew it was the same guy. I remembered everything, and at this hour, I didn't know who else it could be. I walked over to the door very slowly and quietly. I looked out the peephole, and sure enough, it was him. He was standing right outside my door. I wondered how he had gotten in the building. I very quietly walked into my bedroom. As I made it in the doorway, he knocked again. When I got inside of my bedroom, I went into the closet and dialed 911. I was as quiet as I could be while doing so. I explained what was going on and said that I felt that I was in danger. I was told that an officer would be there shortly. In the meantime, I was really hoping that the man wouldn't try to break in or anything. I carefully walked back to the doorway of my bedroom and listened. I heard the man trying to open the door once more, and then he knocked again. After that, there was no sounds for a good 2 or 3 minutes. I thought maybe he was gone, so I walked back over to the door and looked out the peephole again. He was still there, standing right there on the other side. Just remembering seeing the guy through the peephole right on the other side gives me the creeps. I quietly went back into my bedroom. I waited there, and a short time later, I heard multiple voices outside my door in the hallway. I walked over and looked out again. I saw the man talking with a police officer, and they walked away down the hallway. A short time after that, a police officer knocked on my front door to talk to me. Apparently, The man made up a story that he thought I had dropped some money on the ground when walking home, and he was trying to return it to me. Obviously, that was a total lie. I hadn't dropped any money. After that, I never saw the man again though. I don't know how exactly he found out where I lived, other than that he must have followed me home before without me knowing. He must have also watched my building to see me at my window before I noticed him. It's all really creepy to think about. I've worked several different jobs before finding my current career, which I love. One of those jobs was working for a cleaning company. We were a company that would go to different businesses in the area, mostly office buildings, and clean them. Sometimes there would be multiple employees sent to clean. Other times, it was just one of us. I remember that there was this one office building in particular that I was sent to clean. I worked late nights, and I enjoyed the night shifts. Going to and from work, there would be no traffic, and it was nice to be able to get my work done and leave pretty easily. However, this is not something that I would enjoy doing for a long period of time, but it was nice for a while. In this one office building, when I got there, I would be the only person in the entire building. It wasn't that big, but they did have 3 floors. There was a checklist of all the things that I needed to get done, and then I could leave. I was given access to the building, and I remember that when I first got inside, I saw that all the lights were off. I started on the first floor, and the things I needed to do were clean the floors by vacuuming, cleaning the bathrooms, and disinfect and clean a couple of other areas. It would probably take me only about 2 hours. After I finished up the first floor, I moved up to the second. Probably about 20 minutes into working on the second floor, I was vacuuming when I thought I heard the elevator. I paused and turned off the vacuum for a second. The elevator was in fact moving, and it was going up to the 3rd floor. I was only like 30 feet away from it, and suddenly I felt a little worried. I knew for a fact that nobody else was supposed to be here. After thinking about it a little, I wasn't sure at all what somebody else would be doing there. If somebody was in fact supposed to be there, I would have been informed about it. I didn't want to investigate, and I just went back to cleaning. I finished vacuuming and then cleaned the bathrooms on that floor. When I moved out to clean a window of one of the office areas, I heard a noise from the floor that I was in. My heart started racing. I tried telling myself to not be scared about it. I couldn't see to the area directly where the noises were coming from. I kept working and didn't hear anything else for several minutes, but then I heard some noises again. By this point, it was all I could think about, even as I worked. I decided to walk over to where the noises were coming from. Maybe there was a logical explanation. I walked over and at first saw nothing, but then I heard a noise again really suddenly. It sounded much closer and louder than what I had heard before. I then saw a man running from behind one wall and go down a hallway briefly before going into the stairwell. I saw him for a total of maybe 3 seconds. I didn't get a good look at him at all, but I had a feeling that he wasn't supposed to be in here. How he got in, I had no idea. I walked over to the stairwell, and when I got there, I opened up the door. I didn't hear any noise when I did. When I looked inside, I didn't see anybody either. The man must have gone up a flight of stairs or down a flight of stairs. I didn't think that he had enough time to be on another floor yet, though. I felt like he was still inside there. I yelled, asking who he was. He didn't respond. I then yelled that nobody was supposed to be in this building, and he had to leave now or else I was going to call the police. Right after I said this, I heard a door open and then shut. It was coming from down on the 1st level. While the man hadn't answered me, I figured that because he was on the 1st floor now, he was leaving. I waited in the stairwell listening for a couple of minutes before going back to the 2nd floor and finishing up my work there. It didn't take me long to finish there before I moved up to the 3rd floor to clean that level. I got up there and did the same routine I had for the previous 2 floors. They were all pretty similar. I didn't hear any noises and things were going well. Sure, I was still going to have to report that somebody had been in the building, but I really thought that the man had left. Just when I was about finished with the 3rd floor, I was in one of the hallways when I suddenly heard footsteps. They were coming from behind me. I had absolutely no idea how the man was back up here. The footsteps behind me were quickly approaching. When they were maybe 20 feet back, I turned around. I saw just enough of the man for a second before I turned back and ran for the stairs. I knew I had no chance to make it to the elevator. When I got to the stairs, I sprinted down as fast as I could. I heard the man running down the stairs behind me. He was about 1 flight of stairs behind, so I couldn't see him. I was running as fast as I possibly could. At last, I made it to the 1st floor and sprinted out for the front doorway. I made it outside and ran to my vehicle, which was a work truck. I got inside, but some of my equipment was still inside the building. I called the police and my boss. I waited in my truck in the parking lot until the police got there. When they did, they went inside and actually came out with the man about 10 minutes later. I'm really glad that they caught him. After talking with police and my boss, I was able to go in and get my stuff and then leave. This was a pretty scary experience for me though. I've thought about what would have happened if the man had caught up with me when he was walking up from behind. Would he have tried to hurt me? The fact that he chased after me makes me think yes. I'm just really glad that I got away.